Hey everybody, Matt from Mountainside Arts here, and today I'm going to show you how I make these wood and epoxy sunrises. Alright, let's get into it. So the first thing I do is I cut the backing. I usually use 1/2 inch ply for this. Anything thinner and it really becomes problematic when you're trying to nail the frame around the outside edges. You'll see what I mean by that in a minute. But first, let's make the sun pieces. I almost always like to use reclaimed wood when I can, so today I'm using this old piece of decking. I take it over to the miter saw and cut it to length, then over to the table saw to cut off the edges and get it to the width that I want it to be, which is going to be the height of the suns. Then I plane both sides. I do this because I want a flat surface where I'm going to glue the sun down to the backing. If you don't have a flat surface, then the epoxy will creep in all the little holes. Here I'm finding the middle of the board because I actually want to get 2 suns out of this one board. So I'm going to resaw this board into 2 separate boards. Now we'll take our compass and draw a half circle on both of the boards to make the suns, and I did paint the backing yellow off screen. Now it's time to cut them out on the bandsaw. And do some seesaw sanding to clean up the end from the bandsaw lines. Get all the edges and the top. And again, my neurotic perfectionism won't allow me to walk away from them without cleaning them up a little bit and doing some hand sanding too. And over to the staining station, where I'll throw some Sedona red on these puppies. Oh, that looks so cool. So now I'm going to measure and cut the frame pieces to length. Then I'm going to glue and nail the suns on. And once the suns are on, then I'll put the frame pieces around the whole thing. So I find the center point of both the backing and the sun to make sure everything lines up. And I always use little pieces of these blue shop towels to put in between the clamps and the sun so I don't ruin the sun. Alright, let's put the frame on. So I think of this as a frame for the epoxy resin pour. I make sure that bead of glue is continuous all the way across. I don't want any holes because resin will definitely find them and seep through. This is also that part that I was talking about earlier where you don't want a thin backing piece because those nails will split out the sides. Alright, now it's time for the epoxy pour. So I like to get everything set up beforehand so I'm not running around looking for things. So we have all of our color that we're going to use. I have cups of different sizes. I have stirring sticks. I have the epoxy sitting there ready to pour. I've got a torch, gloves, and a mask. If you're doing 1 or 2 of these a year, that's cool. Maybe you don't need a mask, but if you're doing this all the time, like we do, then a mask is imperative. Now the epoxy that we use is non-toxic. However, again, if you're doing it all the time, you're going to want a mask. So the first thing that we do is level the pieces. So the epoxy, as when you pour it, it's going to move one way, it's going to move the other way, it's going to follow gravity, right? So if your piece is just a little bit off, you'll know it. And all that epoxy will start going like this, pouring to one side, and it's going to ruin kind of what you did, you know? Sometimes really cool effects, but if you're going for a specific thing, then you need to make sure it's level as much as possible. A level and a couple of wood shims is really all you need for this process. Notice how I have my level on the inside of the frame? That's because sometimes the frame isn't exactly on the same level as the backing, and the backing is what you're pouring the epoxy onto. Speaking of epoxy, I have my 50-50 mix of resin and hardener here. I've mixed them up and I'm pouring it into 4 different cups, so I have 4 different colors. I've got a yellow, an orange, a red, and then kind of a deeper red. I usually don't do just a pure yellow or a pure orange. I'll mix just a little bit of orange into the yellow, and same thing with the red, a little bit of orange into the red. So then when they mix, everything blends just a little bit better. As I'm pouring the epoxy, I'm thinking about things like how much color to add where, and how everything will mix together in the end. For this piece, I'm just using a popsicle stick to blend the colors, but really you could use anything you want. I like the popsicle stick for this particular piece because it's a little wider. Okay, so I've dribbled a little white in there for the clouds. The important part is what I'm doing right now. I want to texture the white to make them look like clouds, or else the white will just kind of get muddy in with the other colors. So we want to create clouds that are kind of unique onto themselves and stand out a little bit from the other colors. Alright, let's make some sun rays. The first thing I'm going to do here is cut this old piece of redwood into 2 thin strips. And now I take a straight edge and basically just make some triangles. And here you can also see the sister pour to the one that we just did. I'm calling this one Copper Sunrise, the last one Into the Dawn. And now we just take those triangles that we made and cut them out on the bandsaw. Things are coming together. Let's decide where we want all these different rays. I like to mix it up a little bit between thick ones and thin ones. Now I'll take a straight edge and mark the ends of the rays where the frame is. And then I do a quick cut on the bandsaw, cutting those off. And sand them a bit before I head over to the staining station. And here we get to choose what color the rays are going to be. Some are going to be dark, some are going to be light. Sometimes it depends on what the background looks like. Totally unique, every single one of them. But it always comes out so cool. To glue the rays down, I actually just use a clear epoxy. But in order for epoxy to adhere to epoxy, you have to give it a little bit of a sand. So I'm really extra careful when I apply the epoxy to the back of the race. I put a very thin strip down so I don't get squeeze out, and I'm extra careful not to drip anything on the existing piece. And there they are. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so we can keep bringing you cool stuff, and have a beautiful day.